Hello, my name's Stephen Wokes. I wrote Through the Blobs, and today I'm talking about the editor and trying to explain it to everyone so they can use this powerful tool. So from the main menu, if you just click Editor, this takes you to the main screen. You can see in front of you the default grid, which is a 10 by 10 grid. There's various buttons. I'll go around them each one at a time and explain how it all works. So first of all, on the top right we have the size. It's probably best to set this first, because if you put anything on the grid and then you change the size, it wipes the grid. So try and get your grid size correct the first time, otherwise you'll have to redo your level. So I think it allows anything from 8 is the minimum. If I try and put less than 8, it forces it back to 8, and I think the largest grid size we can have is 20. I'll just check that. I should know, but yeah, it is 20. Good, if I remembered correctly. Beyond 20, it becomes difficult to see on small phones. That's why I limited the size to 20. So let's put it back to something a bit more manageable. Let's start with something really small of 8. Now you'll see straight away that by default it puts this border of closed tiles around the outside. You can change that if you want. I'll just quickly show you that in settings. That's this boundary here. If you turn the boundary off, then I refresh the grid, you no longer have the boundary. Furthermore, in settings, again, there's this inner tile choice. So if you want it to be like a mainly mud level, you can choose the inner tile to be mud. And the next time you refresh the grid, let's change it to 10, then you get mud everywhere. Okay, I'm just going to set this back to normal because it's a bit easier to work with for what I want to demonstrate today. Okay, so we're back to our normal 8 by 8 grid. One point worth mentioning to start with is all grids have to be square. Initially the editor and the game was designed so I could have rectangular grids, but the way the UI layout worked and the resizing of everything on different devices, it was far easier to go through the logic if the grids were kept square. So I'm sorry about that, it's just a limitation of the system at the moment. So let's start with the most obvious thing, which is the tiles. So in the right hand side here we have the different tile types you can lay on the grid. So there's the open tile, which is what was populated here, so you can get rid of the boundary here. Then there's the coloured tiles. These are the blue ones, which only blue can go on, and red and green and so on and so forth. The closed tiles, basically the walls of the levels. This is like the empty tiles, the voids, the gaps which you can fall down. This is the switch, which is a very important tile. There's some more complicated features to do with that. I'll explain that a bit later. The mud, ice, I've overwritten my mud. The exit tile. You can only have one of these, so if you try and place more than one, it will just move the last one. You can actually create a level without an exit, but that's not very fair because no one can ever finish the level. So you should always have an exit. And then the travelator tiles, which basically force the blobs and anything else to move in certain directions. So that's just a very crude level I've just shoved together very quickly. The other thing that a level must have is at least one blob. Now in the actual game it progresses with blue, then blue and red, then blue, red, green, then blue, red, green, yellow. In the editor you can have any combination of blobs. So if you want, you can play with the green blob and the blue blob. You don't need the red one, for example. Okay, so placing the blobs is fairly simple. Essentially there can only obviously be one blue blob at a time. If you click on him again, he disappears. Okay, so that's just a very simple level we've just thrown together very quickly. So if you want to test it, you go over to the test button here and it will start the level, and then you can move the blobs around as normal, so it all works as you'd expect. When you finish the level, it will take you straight back to the editor. Okay, right, let's go through some of the more complicated aspects. So first of all, there's two sides of the grid. So for every level, there's over here, which is controlled up here, there's a first side and there's a second side. And the second side basically contains the starting grid, but it also remembers where the exit tile is and also the pressed or the activated switch. Okay, but everything else is lost. Now the purpose of this is, so basically it's for the switches to work. So when a switch is activated, like this one here, it flicks the state of certain tiles and it changes them from the first side state to the second side state. So for example, and that's controlled by the switch tool. So if we activate the switch tool, click on the switch, it goes orange to show we're sort of controlling and doing this, the logic for this switch. If you then click on the tiles like this one and this one, okay, and then we click on something else like an empty tile. When we test the level now, if I move green onto this switch, you see those two tiles flick, and they flick to the empty tile. I'm just going to go menu to take us back to the editor, and that's because on the second side of these two switches it's the empty tile. However, if I wanted, for example, to put like some ice tiles here, I could do this, and now when I test it, move the green blob on, and they flick to ice tiles. Okay, so the point is the second grid is there so that you can change tiles using switches. Okay, so there's always these two grids. Normally you work on the first grid, but the secondary grid you use for switch effects. Okay, so yes, so the switch tool, I guess I should just make sure I've gone through everything there. So it's fairly obvious. If you have two switches on a level, you can only control one at a time. It sort of shades the tiles that it affects. So if I click around here, you can see the different tiles that are affected. Okay. If you flick to the other switch, it basically clears it, and you can do shade other tiles. Now you can have overlap. The same tile can be controlled by two switches. That's fine. Okay. If they're both activated, it will revert it back to the first side though. So it's kind of like an exclusive OR for those engineers out there. So yeah, that's basically how it works. You can have as many switches as you want. You can't switch the state of other switches, because if you try, the logic changes to the other switch. Okay, and that's pretty much it. So is there anything else tile-wise to talk about? No, I think that's it. So now let's move over to this side, so possibly the more interesting side. So we obviously have all the blobs. We have blocks which we can place on the level. Okay, we also have the robots. So this is the shooter robot. This is the patrol robot, which we'll set somewhere here, not to kill ourselves. And we have the hunter robot, the tracker robot, as I like to call them. Essentially, it's the Mark 1, the Mark 2, and the Mark 3. Right, let's trap the tracker robot in, otherwise it's going to kill us very quickly. Okay, and let's show you how that works. This robot's probably going to blast the other one straight away. Let's see. Yeah. And he's trying to get down to us, but he can't because he's trapped. And this one's trying to rotate, but he can't. So let's give them a bit more space so we can see them in action. Let's let this one rotate a little bit, and I'm going to move the patroller. I'm going to move him there so he's not going to get blasted straight away. And let's give this one a little bit more space, but not too much, because we don't want to die straight away. Something like that. Okay, so let's press test now. So you can see straight away the tracker's come down, and he's trying to find a route to us, to green, because it's the nearest blob, but he can't get through. Meanwhile, the laser one, the Mark 1 robot's just going around doing its thing, which it always does. It just rotates through 360 and blasts in every direction. Now the patroller isn't doing anything, and that's because no patrol has been defined. So we go back to the editor. The way you define a patrol is you use this patrol tool here. So if you click on this and then click on your Mark II robot, the patroller, again it's highlighted in orange to show we're doing the logic for this robot. Now you then click a path for the robot to follow. So essentially it's quite simple. You just move one at a time, okay, like this. Now you can't move too far, because obviously the path has to be continuous. It can't make any sudden jumps, okay, but you can go back over spaces you've already gone on. That's fine. What will happen is the robot's logic is quite simple. It just follows the path, and when it gets to the end of the path, it reverses it. So what you should see is the robot comes over here, goes up, goes down, goes up, down, there, and then it will retrace its steps. So let's test that works. So what I neglected to take into account is that, of course, it activates the switch. Let's get rid of that switch so we don't have that problem. Hold on. Okay, let's try it again. Here we go. So now it follows its route. And it's trying to go down to the blue, but it can't, of course, because it can't enter the blue square. Right, let's clear this block so we don't keep killing the patroller. Let's make these nice and open, and let's try again. There we go. It just does its route and reverses it and goes back to the beginning. So that's how the patrol logic works. It's quite simple, but with 2 or 3 of these patrollers going on a level, it can get quite complicated and quite difficult for the blobs. So it doesn't need to be too complicated. Okay, so that's essentially how you build and test levels. The settings buttons, you can control what music track you want to play. So we're listening to Light Laps here. We can change it to Atlantis. You get to name the level, so let's call it test level 1. Oh, I can't call it 1, can't do numbers. Author, for the sake of, let's just call it Stephen. And hint, this gives you the ability to add a hint to help people finish the level. You can make it as useful or as unuseful as you like. Try not to die. There we go. And then the next stage is to save the level. Okay, there's a little medal popped up. So the first time you ever save a level, you get a medal, and the level will now be saved to a location. Okay, now the load button shows you all the save levels. These are the ones I've done before. Let's try and show you an interesting one. This is one I was going to put in the game, but I thought it was too difficult. So here you can see the setup I created. It's not too complicated. You've only got one blob, but it's you've got to basically outmaneuver the lasers and the patrollers. Let's see if I can. I'm gonna die. Here we go. Push. Try and get the damage right. Over here. No. Ah! And anyway, you're supposed to go up to the block and push on the switch and then get back to the exit. Anyway, so you can create as complicated levels as you want. You can save them, and then you could share them using the share button here. Now this isn't going to work at the moment because I'm in the editor, so the logic doesn't work. But on Android devices, on Apple, this will allow you to then push the file out through an email or other share services, which you can then download using your web browser and play the level. So for downloaded levels, they'll appear here when you import them into the game. Okay, so again, these are some levels I've created in the past. This is a test one I did ages ago. It's very easy. Don't move. Okay. Essentially, you can sit here and download the levels you want. Hey, and there's another medal the first time you play a level for the first time. Okay, so I hope that was useful as an introduction to the editor and all its setup. I think I've covered everything. So hopefully you can have fun, go away and create your own levels and share them amongst your friends. Okay, thank you for watching and goodbye.